Դուք լսում եք Ժամանակակից արվեստի ինստիտուտի ոդքասթը։ Այստեղ մենք քննարկում ենք ինչ ասես, հիմնականում արվեստ։
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us on this first episode of our new podcast series dedicated to artists staying at the Nest Art Residency at ICA. Our guest today is Dervla O'Flaherty. She's an Irish artist working with paint and wood. Originally, she's from Dublin. She's based in Hungary for the past 9 years, and she's going to share with us some insights about her experience here in Armenia, her creative process, and anything she wants to share with us. So first of all, can you tell us a bit about your artistic background and how you chose art as a life path?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm a painter. I always think no matter what I do is painting. Even now I work a little bit more with different media, sometimes with photography and drawing. Yeah, I guess I always felt that I was going to be an artist. There's always one kid in every class that's good at drawing and painting. So I was that one in my class. And yeah, it just seemed quite natural, I think. One pretty seminal moment I remember is the painter Francis Bacon. He was born and raised in Ireland, even though he later moved to UK and hated Ireland for the rest of his life. They decided to move his studio to the Hugh Lane Gallery in Dublin. They moved it over, he's very famous for this very chaotic studio. And they moved it over like an archaeological dig, piece by piece. They even categorized the dust and brought it all over where it is now in the Hugh Lane Gallery in Dublin. And I was a very young teenager when I first saw this. Everyone was very excited. My grandmother brought me to see it. And that was the first time I had gone to a gallery, like a proper museum gallery, and seen painting that was very, very raw, very visceral. And, it wasn't what I'd been used to seeing. I was always like, yeah, I'm going to be a painter. I love painting. But that was a very, very big experience for me to see this type of work. And it wasn't on the street. It wasn't, something, it was something very, very highly regarded. And it really, really excited me. After that, I started really, keeping scribbled notebooks and being very free and knowing that I could there was this new license to push how I drew or painted, because I saw this incredible artist in a real museum.
Oh,
so
yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So that was a big moment, and after that, I don't think I had any question. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a painter like Francis Bacon. Hasn't really really gone that far, but So I studied fine art painting in the National College of Art and Design in Dublin, and afterwards I did a postgrad also in fine art in Cyprus College of Art in Paphos, Cyprus.
Okay. And you've done many projects in Ireland, India, Iceland, Cyprus that you mentioned, Hungary. So my question is, what brought you to Armenia? How did you decide to explore this country in particular?
So from back the time I was doing my degree, space and place became integral parts. There are different elements that are always in play at what I'm researching, but this is always very central. And also architecture, the language of architecture, even though my work can be seen as quite abstract, this is usually the frame that's kind of holding it, architectural and also grid work. So this is something that I'm always looking for the right kind of textures to support what I want to explore. And since moving to Hungary, one of the things that really struck me there was a very new style of, well, not new, but very different to Ireland, this kind of post-Soviet blockhouses, this mixture of different architectural styles. And this has been very inspiring for me. This was, very, very, I mean, obviously I stayed there for 9 years, but recently when I realized that I had chance to travel again, I started seeing, where do I really want to go? Where do these textures and, interesting mix of styles exist that I can gather for my research? And Armenia came up as a cool place to visit. I did some research and I found that you have this residency program here, and luckily here I am. So yeah, that was there were a few places I was interested in exploring, and Armenia was on that.
Okay, and can you tell me, actually it's in two parts. I want to know about your creative process in general, how you work, but also more specifically for Armenia, the research process, what did you focus on? Like theoretically, what did you study? I don't know, because you mentioned myth and memory in your artist statement. So it's, I guess, in two parts about your creative and research process.
Yes, correct. So myth is an important part of how I work. And specifically for what I am concentrating on recently are different ideas of the otherworld in myth and folktale. And this actually comes back to the Irish idea of the otherworld. There are different versions and different myths and folktale, but in Ireland it's interesting to me that the otherworld, it's not an afterlife. It's not, somewhere you go when you die. It's somewhere that exists and is accessible from the present world. You just have to know the right way to go, the right access points. And in the Irish myth, all the different localities, towns, they might have their own, idea of where you can enter this other world. And these other worlds also can be, in some accounts, they can be local. So it's not necessarily one big other world that joins up, but depending where you are, you can find this. This is an interesting framework for me. I like the idea of myth as not as a a mythologist or something. I don't know if that's the right word, but I like it as I feel it was a way of kind of discussing unknown, things that we can't quite understand. I feel like that's the function of myth. And this idea of the other world, this functions for me with how I want to explore the place and space in my work. So this is a kind of an easy, I guess, way to explain the way I approach my work. So here in Armenia, I have been in Yerevan mostly. I have been setting out normally with my camera. And I have been trying to find these textures, as I mentioned earlier, in the architecture and the buildings in different places that I feel visually I could imagine could possibly be access points to this other world, if this mythical other world was to exist here. So this is a kind of a frame that I use to pull the images that I want and bring them together then later in mixed media paintings. So as you mentioned at the start, my preferred medium is paint and wood, but as I travel a lot, this isn't always the most practical. So here, since it's a short enough project, I've been using paper to paint on instead of wood, and I've also been using my photography as I've been printing and using these as part of the research. So at the moment it's paint on paper, and I've been drawing together these interesting architectural and different place points that I have found and translating them into my Otherworld series.
And also in your, I don't know if it's the artist statement, anyway, on your website, you mentioned the map making as the way you approach your work. So I wanted to ask you how you develop this style, this approach, and also in the same question, the format of your work is always quite the same. It's always like square canvases, right? So I don't know, how did you end up developing this particular style?
Yeah, good question. So these things, they just slowly carve out over time, and they are always changing a little bit as well. So for the first part, the map making, this grid work style, this as I mentioned about the architecture, this map making, this grid style became interesting to me as a kind of I guess. When things because I am gathering quite different material and trying to put them together visually, I feel like it needs something to hang on to, and it needs something very solid. And when this became part of my work, I think the first time was actually when I was doing an artist residency in one of the northern fjords of Iceland. It was a very, very, very quiet, tiny fishing village, very isolated. And at that time, I came to do a painting project, but and also interested in these ideas of space and place and exploring myth in this idea. At this time, it was from a slightly different angle, but it's still the same general line of interest. And everything was covered in snow. Every single thing was covered in this thick. There was nothing to see almost. It was completely white. And I said, okay. I started to think like anything could be under there. And that was, of course, incredibly juicy for my imagination. Could be anything. And I started to think I was, needed to make this whiteness, this blankness. And I thought of one of my favorite novels is Moby Dick. This story of searching for this white whale, and in the book there is a chapter of the whiteness of the whale, that the most disturbing thing about the whale was that it was white, and it goes on and on about different ideas of this whiteness. So for that reason I decided to invert it, and this project became Mapping the Dark, and the darkness of course being the unknown, what's underneath it could be. And these are still what I feel I am searching for, no matter where I am. It's just not always snow. That's that I am mapping.
And since you've been here for a month now, what would you say is specific about Armenia's landscape and architecture? Compared to other countries, what is it that that touched you specifically?
Well, it's probably always the case with so as I mentioned, I had done some research and decided that Armenia was one of the places that would be interesting me to visit. And of course, no matter how you research, things are never how you expect. It was very different when I came here to the picture I had formulated in my mind. There is this city is it has a very grand feeling. I mean, it's a very new city, I guess, which wasn't what I expected. And then outside, it's very, very different. Anywhere I have traveled. So I actually came here by bus from Tbilisi. So I saw quite a lot of the landscape coming down. And almost every 30 minutes or every hour it had changed again. There were these moments where there were these fantastic, small, very round hills that I don't think I had ever seen something like this, and very green areas, to then these more like very dusty desert-looking areas. It seemed like everywhere I looked, there was some sort of new jewel to see.
Good. So we wish you good luck on your artistic path to the unknown, and yeah, I mean, you're welcome anytime to come back to Armenia.